Let me know if this sounds familiar. You're an upper elementary teacher and you've noticed that your students are struggling to read longer texts. They stumble over words, they get stuck often, and when they're finished, they really can't tell you what they just read. I know it can be super frustrating, but I am here to help. Hi, I'm Tammy with the Stellar Teacher Company, and today I am sharing a simple fluency routine that you can put into place in your classroom that takes just 5 to 10 minutes per day. Before we get started creating that simple routine, let's talk about why we should even focus on fluency to begin with. Well, you may know that fluency is the bridge between decoding and comprehension. When students have to spend less time figuring out what the words say, they can think a lot more about what the text means. So with fluency practice, we are able to help our students free up all of that mental energy they were using to decode the text in order to comprehend the text. There are a couple of things that we want to make sure that we implement in order to make this fluency routine as effective as it can be. And the first is consistency. Look, I know that your schedule is overpacked, it's so full, and you're probably thinking right now, I cannot believe you were asking me to add another thing to my literacy block. But if you can find just 5 to 10 minutes a day to squeeze in this literacy practice, and you can do it consistently, you are going to see huge gains with your students' fluency and in turn, their comprehension. The second thing you need to make this fluency routine the best that it can be is that you need to make sure that you pick the correct text. And really what we want to think about is that the text should be challenging enough for our students so that when they pick it up for that first read, they don't just read through it fluently and perfectly, because we want them to grow throughout the week. Now, here is the beautiful news about this. You can use the same text all week long. There's a lot of research to support repeated reading, and the great thing about using that same text is it's going to make planning super easy for you, and it helps your students build up confidence as they read the same text all week long. The third thing that you want to make sure that you include is teacher modeling and feedback. So in order for our students to be fluent readers, they have to hear fluent reading. And so the only way really for them to hear fluent reading is for you as the teacher to read to them as often as you can, modeling all of those aspects of fluency that we are focused on. Additionally, you want to provide feedback. And I know you're busy, so you may not be able to listen to every student read every single day, but it's also okay for your students to provide themselves feedback and for peer feedback to be put into place. And one of the best ways to do this is to use fluency assessment tools, especially self-assessment tools. And so with this fluency routine, your students can assess their reading, when they first get this text, and again, after practicing all week long. This is a really powerful way for your students to see the areas that they're growing in and to see where they need to continue to practice. Before we build our routine, I want to give you some ideas for fluency activities that you can put into the routine, and they are all interchangeable, which makes it really easy to plan out your week, and it makes it easy to keep it exciting and fun for your students. So the first is teacher modeling. And like I mentioned before, this is a really crucial aspect of a fluency routine. And so whenever you are introducing a new text to your students, I definitely recommend reading it out loud to them so they can hear what that fluent reading sounds like. We want to give them a goal for their expression, their rate, their accuracy. And the best way to do that is for them to hear a fluent reader modeling what they should be doing when they're reading the text themselves. The second activity is echo reading. And with echo reading, you are going to read a portion of the text out loud, modeling fluent reading, and your students will immediately echo, reading it just the way you did. And you can just make your way through the text section by section. Choral reading is when you are all going to read the text in unison, and you are reminding your students that they should be matching your rate. They want to sound just like you do as you are reading this text together. The amazing thing about choral reading is it doesn't take a lot of time. Everybody can pull out their passage, or you can have it up on the smartboard, and you can make your way through the text a couple of times depending on what your schedule looks like. Technology is another great way to implement fluency practice, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. So listening to the text read fluently is a great scaffold for students who, maybe they heard you read it the first time and that wasn't enough. If you have a recorded version, they can listen to it multiple times to help build up their fluency. Additionally, if students can record themselves and listen back, sometimes they might realize, oh wow, I thought that my expression was great, my rate was just where it should be, but then they realize when they listen, ooh, I could continue working on that. Also, kids love hearing themselves, so this is just a fun way to keep that fluency reading exciting. Performance reading is another activity that I would not skip in my fluency routine. And performance reading really gives students a purpose for that repeated reading. If we're asking them to read the text all week long, that same text, having them perform it at the end of the week gives them a reason to try to get better. And so with performance reading, they can read to a partner, they can read to a small group, or they can read to the entire classroom. Again, this just depends on your schedule, your group of students, and what works best for you. So, like I mentioned, these fluency activities are really interchangeable, and you can use them in any way that you feel is most effective. But let's talk about the structure of this fluency routine that I want you to put into place in your classroom. And I'm going to start with a really general overview, and then I'll give you an example with the fluency activities plugged in. So if I had a 5-day fluency routine, on Monday, we would start by introducing the text. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are going to be fluency practice. And this is where you will plug in those fluency activities. This can be done as individuals, it can be done in small groups, or it can be done in the whole class. Whatever works best for you. And that's the beauty of this routine. And then on Friday, we will have performance reading and a self-assessment to see what kind of growth was made throughout the week. So that's the general structure. Now, what would it look like with activities plugged in? Here's an example. And remember, this can be changed up, or you could do this every week, and that would be totally fine too. So on Monday, introduce the text with teacher modeling, and then have students read through the text independently a couple of times if you have time. On Tuesday, echo reading and some independent reading afterwards. Wednesday, choral reading would be the way to practice our text. And if there's time, again, the students will read through the text independently. On Thursday, I would put into place partner practice. And with partner practice, I would give my students the option. They can read it together chorally, they can do echo reading, or they can take turns listening to each other read and providing feedback. And on Friday, I would do performance reading in small groups because I know that it wouldn't take up a large amount of time, but everybody would get a chance to perform for a group. And I would have my students fill out a self-assessment tool to see what kind of growth they made with their fluency passage that week. Like I mentioned before, I know you are busy. I know your schedule is crazy, and I know it's hard to add in something else. So I'm going to challenge you. If you don't have time to put in an entire fluency routine, try 1 or 2 strategies that I shared with you. Just a little bit each day will make a huge difference. So I would love to know in the comments, which strategy are you going to try first? Or are you going to put this 5-day fluency routine into practice as soon as you can? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of exciting content coming up. We cannot wait to support you, and we want to make your literacy block be the best that it can be.